Hi, everyone. Happy Monday. So today I am doing something a little bit different because my guest, who most of you know, Kirk Nurmi, he's amazing. He defended Jodi Arias. We all know who she is, but his service is just horrible. So he can't really do StreamYard without going in and out. And I wanted to get his opinion on the Baldwin trial. I wanted to get everything out of his brain that I could extract. So I just did a Zoom interview with him, and I'm going to play parts of it right now for you guys. And then I'll stop and start. We can talk about it. We can ask questions. But Alec Baldwin starts tomorrow, jury selection. Kirk made some really good points about what's going to happen, things that I didn't really think about. But again, this is why I need him, and this is why I use him for this. So let me go through and just play. I'm going to get this video up, and we will start. Let's see. I hope you guys had a good weekend. Let me get to, some comments. Oh, hi, Joe. How are you? I'm so excited to go on with you tomorrow to talk about, gosh, all sorts of things. I guess this, Matthew Perry, and then Nikki Chang, which is still crazy, crazy, crazy. All right, let's see. I'm getting the video up. Okay. All right, here we go. So, hello, Kirk. Good morning. Happy Monday. Cringy.
Hello, Lauren. Delighted to be here with you. It's a lovely Monday morning here, so I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm excited too. My children are outside the door. So if they come in, I'm very sorry to everybody. There's no camp today. I forgot to sign up for camp after a long week, but this is an interesting week, Kirk, because the Alec Baldwin trial starts tomorrow, July 9th. There's jury selection. I think a lot of people are wondering what to expect here, and who better to talk about that than you?
Well, thank you. I hope I can say something intelligent here this morning.
Yeah. And you guys feel free to just jump in with comments if you'd like. And I can, oh, that was a really awesome place for me to pause. What's wrong with me? But anyway, my point was jump in with comments. I'll pause, I'll stop and start, whatever. And I'm going to get myself off of, this pause. Yeah, okay. No, everything you say is intelligent, my friend, my God. But jury selection right away. I think this will take a day. I'm not concerned about jury selection at all. I don't know about you, but in my opinion, I think they'll easily find people that are open-minded to hearing all the facts, changing their mind if they have something in their head based on what they hear and see. What do you think?
I would disagree with that a bit because New Mexico being a relatively small state population-wise, and Alec Baldwin being such a big name. I mean, there's high-profile cases where, maybe it seems like everybody should know about it, but mostly it's people in the true crime community that know about it. Alec Baldwin is someone that people know about. So it's going to be enticing, I think, to people to be on this jury, particularly so like what we saw Karen Reed was 8, 9, 10 weeks, whatever it was, right? Mm-hmm. And this is going to be 8 or 9 days. And so with that in mind, I think there's going to be a lot of people that might be motivated to get on this jury because they know the high profile nature of the defendant. So when they go in that courtroom, they're not going to know what I mean, my experience is such that they're not going to know what case they're getting when they go in. But when they're brought into that courtroom, they see Mr. Baldwin, et cetera. There's probably going to be a desire to get on that trial, particularly, at least the way it worked in Maricopa County. If you weren't selected for the original trial, you might get assigned to another one. So what could be, which could be longer or who knows what, right? And not as exciting or high profile. So this might be a chance for a lot of jurors to get some notoriety maybe and be a part of this big trial.
Yeah. So what do you think then? Do you think 2 days? I mean, because I've seen it reported that many people that are involved with this think that it's going to last 10, 11 days, maybe longer because of deliberations. But yeah, everything from jury selection to closing arguments, 10 days.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard the judge saying that they want it done on the 19th. I don't know how you really set that timetable in a criminal trial, because the defendant has the right to present a full defense, and things happen, right? But I think, in terms of the timing of jury selection, a day, maybe two, depending on the nature of the voir dire, because it can become problematic when people, if it's done in groups, people might blurt out, I think Alec Baldwin's this, Hollywood snob or whatever, and they blurt that out to the whole panel, and sometimes the whole panel can be tainted. And if I'm the defense attorney, I'm wanting to make sure that there's no covert jurors on there, jurors who say they're going to be fair, but are really not being fair because, again, they just want on the
And I'm going to pause it because I get it. Alec Baldwin, he's pissed off a lot of people. I mean, he doesn't have the best reputation, I guess, in the public eye. And I firmly believe this is because paparazzi, they love to stalk him. They love to push his buttons. I don't know if you guys saw a few months ago, there was some protester who was very pro-Palestine, knowing that Alec Baldwin is pro-Israel, and she really harassed him until he broke. And I was like, man, that's not really fair. And I have experience with him. When I was doing entertainment, I interviewed him, and he didn't have to talk to me. I was with an outlet that, it was my own outlet, I guess. And I didn't really have a lot of viewers and a lot of listeners at the time. And he still spoke to me, and he was pretty nice. I mean, he was very serious, very, strictly business, but he was nice, and he didn't necessarily have to be, because all the other big outlets were there, Access Hollywood, and then there was me, and he still spoke to me. So yeah, I do think he has gotten a really, really bad reputation, and he's not all to blame for it.
on the trial, and there's a lot
Fast forward
to see if, look, the typical case, and this is not like a highly complicated case in many ways. It might be high profile, but it's not a death penalty case. It's not that sort of thing. But they could have somebody looking at these accounts. They could have somebody maybe monitoring if person X is on the jury and they think they've made it, and they're posting, "Ooh, I'm going to make it onto the Alec Baldwin trial. I can't wait to fry him," or what have you. Right. They might have people that do that look out for that. But generally speaking, in a quote unquote normal case, you're not going to have that kind of depth or that kind of interaction or that kind of need that people are going to have to post about it, right? But a case like Alec Baldwin, they might feel that need.
Okay, now going to the actual defense's case, or the defense's theory here, his entire case is that he did not pull the trigger. To my knowledge, this is what it is, and the fact that the gun possibly malfunctioned. I don't know if that's been stated throughout all of this, but I'm under the impression, when I'm about to, watch this whole thing unfold, that he is going to put the entire onus on Hannah Gutierrez Reed, who at first we thought would be a witness. We know that the state wanted her as a witness. I sent you the witness list. I believe she wasn't on there at all. So I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting.
Well, let me disagree with you a little bit. I don't think the onus of the defense is going to be on the functioning of the gun. Okay. You might think that because the defense has tried to throw away that evidence because the gun was destroyed, right? But I think what I think is smart of the defense to do here is there's going to be a desire on the part of the defense to maintain, and that's one of the pretrial hearings we're seeing here today, limit the scope of this trial, and I think rightly so, to his role as an actor, not to his role as a producer. And that's one of the things that they're arguing this morning, how much of his role as a producer becomes relevant, because ultimately, and
yeah, if you guys weren't aware, he was a producer on this film. I believe he put up some of his own money. Obviously, there's lots of money from investors. So yeah, Alec Baldwin had a hand in hiring Hannah Gutierrez Reed, who he entrusted with all of the guns on set.
And I think it's true. The problem becomes, it becomes more of a law school hypothetical or a law school exam question than real life. But it is, you look at that New Mexico statute and it says without involuntary manslaughter is acting without due caution. Okay. Well, what the Alec Baldwin team is going to want to do is say, as an actor, he was acting with due caution at that moment because the gun was supposedly checked by Hannah Gutierrez, who should have been the one also ensuring that there was no live ammo on set, and then checked again by Assistant Director Dave Hall before he ever had it. So based on that he was acting with due caution. Because
I also want to point out Assistant Director Dave Halls, he's actually on the defense witness list. And what's interesting about Dave Halls is in 2019, he was working on another film where essentially the exact same thing happened. A gun went off and he was in charge and it had real bullets. And yeah, he was fired from that set. He wasn't prosecuted to my knowledge for this, but it's kind of crazy that the same thing happened. And yeah, he'll be acting as a witness for the defense.
Because he had these people in place. Now, the state of New Mexico wants to open it up and say, hey, he was a producer. He had all these roles. He should have been in charge of safety. He hired crappy people. Well, that's really the argument for his civil liability. It's not the argument for criminal liability. And that's why, I think the judge would be well taken to eliminate that stuff, because ultimately that's what we're talking about when we talk about that involuntary manslaughter.
You're so right. And I didn't even think about it that way. I did post on Twitter, I believe a week ago. I just wanted to remind everybody that SAG put out a statement in January after he was charged for the third time, after, the charges had been dropped, that they side with him 100%. And they echoed the fact that the onus is not on the actor. And I've said this before, when this first happened, George Clooney did some kind of an interview where he basically went against Alec Baldwin and he was just like, that's horrible behavior. I would have never done anything like this. If that was me, I would have opened the gun, showed everybody. That's what we're trained to do as actors. And, showed them, hey, look, there's either nothing in here or there's, whatever. And he didn't do that. And Alec Baldwin in turn was just like, yeah, I didn't. And that's not helpful. I did not. And I don't know if it's that he didn't realize he was supposed to do that. He is a seasoned actor. I do know that he has been in films before where he has to have a weapon in hand. So I thought that was interesting. SAG has his back 100%. So yeah, you might be right. This possibly could have just been settled as a civil suit. As the
producer. What I'm saying is it was a civil suit. He did settle with the widower of Miss Hutchins. But what I'm saying is that goes to civil liability as opposed to criminal liability, because it goes to that without due caution.
Yeah.
And then we're going to hear a lot about industry standards and safety practices for.
So I can fast forward for a little bit, but what I do want to read partly to you was SAG's statement after Alec Baldwin was indicted for literally the third time, I think at that point back in January. And this is from Variety, but the union argued that Baldwin was not responsible for firearm safety, and that if the prosecution rests on such a responsibility, that's an incorrect assessment of the actual duties of an actor on set. And now this is where it comes in. Well, how are they going to play this? Are they going to focus on that he was a producer? Are they going to, obviously the defense is going to go the route that he was an actor and that's not his duty. So SAG said an actor's job is not to be a firearms or weapons expert. Performers trained to perform, they are not required or expected to be experts on guns or experienced in their use. The industry assigns that responsibility to qualified professionals who oversee their use and handling of every aspect. So there you have it. I guess the biggest problem here was that he entrusted a allegedly sloppy 25-year-old. I just feel like, yeah, she participated in some partying on set, which wouldn't be horrible if you were not in charge of firearms and weapons and guns.
I didn't research everyone on.
This on her. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, the state would want to open things up to.
This was, I just fast forwarded a bit. This was when I was asking him about Hannah Gutierrez Reed possibly being a witness in for the state, and I was just a little bit confused as to why they would want to call her. I mean, she's not on the witness list, but I was like, well, why would that be? Why would that be a thing? Why was that rumored?
This producer role, right? And I think that's
Mhm.
where it lands, right? So we'd want to hear, if they were going to call her, I don't think it'd be a good idea, but if they were going to call her, it would be to talk about the overall conditions on the set, how she was
Yeah.
overburdened, all this stuff that we heard in the first trial, right?
Yes.
But at the same time, that really doesn't relate to his failure to exercise due caution at the moment in time when he
Right.
has the gun in his hand, right? And if you think about that, if you're the state of New Mexico and you're calling her as a witness, you've convicted her. She shouldn't have light ammo in the set. I mean, what the defense would do with her would be so much damage. I mean, her drug use,
Yeah.
her
Absolutely.
her getting live ammo on the set. I mean, the list goes on and on. And boo-hoo, I had too many jobs wasn't a defense that certainly worked for her. And it's just really, if the state was going to call it, that would be them saying, "Oh, look at this rich actor. He couldn't even afford to hire a separate prop person, so he made poor Miss Gutierrez do all this stuff, and therefore he's liable because he's a sloppy producer."
And that's what I was thinking. That defense did not work for her because 2 weeks prior to Halyna's death and Joel Souza, the director, getting injured, she did write a letter to the producers saying she was overwhelmed with props and with, being the armorer on set. And they essentially said, suck it up, you have to do both. And I guess she did, but she didn't exactly stop her partying. And that got her convicted. So what do we know about the defense attorneys that Alec Baldwin is using here? So I did not know much about them. I had not heard of them. So one of them, their names are John Bash. Do you know him?
I don't know, and I don't know his counsel at all.
Okay, got it. I was just curious. I'll ask people on the live what they know about him, and I'll do some research. But I was just curious. Had you guys heard of John Bash? Kirk did not. I'm just curious if anyone. Oh wow, I love to put myself on such a pretty frozen position. But yeah, John Bash. I didn't know too much about him, but I wanted to check in with you guys. Yeah, I guess he was a former federal prosecutor, but I'd have to go and look into his past clients. But let me see, Melinda, you just said, I wonder if he's found not guilty. Would anyone want him to produce a film for them again? Why would anyone want to give him funding? It seems reckless. Well, this film company, I believe he owns a little piece of it. I believe there's a couple production companies, and they did a movie together, the same crew, basically the same cast in 2019. It was called Crown Vic. So they planned Russ together, and they planned to get funding. And I just know this because I actually have, and I'll see if I can share it with you guys. But I actually have a lot of the financials. Only because, or not the projected financials, I should say. And this film was only budgeted $6 million, which is not a lot of money for a feature film. So yeah, they didn't have too much money to start. But Alec Baldwin, I think when it comes to him producing a film, he uses his own people. He uses his own or the companies that he's very familiar with. But you're right. I don't think that, yeah, an outside company would necessarily come in and be jumping to work with him. But as we all know, or most of us know, I'm sure, he's kind of focused on a reality show that's going to be taping, which is beyond me. I'm like, my head is exploding over that because he doesn't necessarily seem like the type to want to do a reality show, but maybe times are tough money wise. And so he doesn't really have a choice. And then the whole thing about getting your 7 children on screen, that also sounds awful. But yeah, crazy, crazy. These guys are New York, LA attorneys.
You did hire someone to fix your brakes. You didn't ignore things. Idea of this, failure to exercise with due caution or what have you, right? You think about if your brakes are gone on your car and you need some kind of recall, you can't get it to the dealership. You hire someone else to do it, right? And maybe you hire the mechanic down the street. You don't know that he's on drugs, he uses the wrong parts. Your car doesn't break and you hit somebody. You might be civilly liable for making that choice, but you did hire someone to fix your brakes. You didn't ignore things. So, but you just didn't know that person was on drugs and using the wrong parts. And that's essentially what the armor in this case did, right? She was using drugs and used the wrong parts, used live ammo. Is the driver of that car, before everybody goes, oh, he shouldn't have pointed a gun, blah, blah, blah. It really shouldn't have been much more lethal than a squirt gun, honestly, right?
Yes.
And so it's that kind of thing that people get the gun and the emotions of it and the rightful emotions related to Halyna's death. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, when we talk about that criminal liability, that due caution, I know this is nerdy law talk and everything, right? That gets a little into the weeds, but that's really what it's about in that moment in time. And that's why I think, you mentioned the SAG statement earlier. I think we'll see somebody addressing that issue, because that really can kind of become the issue in a certain circumstances. Did someone act properly, or were they without due caution? And again, it wasn't like he didn't have it. He decided, oh, I'm not going to hire an armor. I'm not going to check. I'm just going to go buy some bullets at Walmart and hope that they're blanks, right? Because the guy at the counter said they're blanks. No, that's not what happened here. So focusing, what the attorneys are going to need to do, whether their cross-examinations are rigorous or not, and the more I talk about it, the more I think, there's really not a lot of facts in dispute here. There may not be need for overly vigorous cross-examination because of the fact that, look, we know what happened. There were live bullets when there shouldn't have been. There might be, there would be aggressive cross-examination if the armor and the assistant director were going to be part of this. But this is pretty straightforward. And one thing I think that we're probably going to see in this regard, which I think would be well advised when you talk about cross-examination, I actually think the defense should put Alec Baldwin on the stand to discuss exactly what he was doing and the safeguards he had in place and how he was operating under his belief of industry standards.
I agree with you. And I flip-flopped about this case for literally the last 3 years. And I think that when I first started, I guess, quote unquote, covering this, I was well into my entertainment career, kind of making my way over to crime and trials. And I had blinders on, and I'm like, well, if he didn't pull the trigger, who did? This is so crazy. Of course he pulled the trigger. Well, now that I'm learning more, I'm not necessarily convinced that, let's say, the gun didn't malfunction. We don't know. We weren't there. There's no video footage of it. We know that when the FBI tried to test it, they broke it into 3 pieces. And now the defense doesn't have I guess do you call it the murder weapon in this case? But I wasn't sure what to call that, what it's called, the murder weapon or the weapon in question, whatever. I also want to just point out that one other witness for the state is director Joel Sousa, who I think that's going to be a really tough witness. Joel Sousa, essentially the bullet went through him to get to Halyna. He obviously was fine, but I'm really interested to know what Joel is going to say. As a human being, I know that the two are friendly, Alec and Joel, and I just wonder how this is going to make Joel feel, how this is going to make Alec feel, and again, if he's going to say anything that's even a little bit incriminating, whatever it is, the weapon in question. And if that were me and I was Alec Baldwin, that's not cool. I would really want my team, my experts, to have a chance to do their thing with this. I really do. So I think I'm torn on this. And watching the previous interviews with Alec, I mean, Halyna was his friend. He was friendly with her. He hired her. He'd worked with her before. He didn't want this to happen. And I'm certain this has ruined his life. Okay. I'm just going to put it out there. We see people living their lives. We see them, paparazzi taking photos. I firmly believe he will never be the same. I believe he probably needs to take medication to sleep at this point. I don't believe that this didn't affect him. And I guess I'm not certain at what charging him will do. And that goes for the family as well. Halyna's family has been in touch with Alec. They made Halyna's widow a producer on the case, or I'm sorry, the movie. So I just feel like they have to charge him. They have to go through with this because he's Alec Baldwin. That's my feeling at this point. But again, I haven't seen everything. So yeah. And if you disagree here, I want to know. I really truly want to know, because I know that my opinion might not be super popular with this case in particular. But yeah, I want to point out that you can go back and look at some of the interviews that Alec Baldwin did upon finding out that, she passed away, and how genuinely upset he is, and just the difference in reactions and responses from him and Hannah Gutierrez Reed. It's just, they're so different. He's so genuinely sad, upset, and hurt. And gosh, I should have Jack Fox on to figure out if he's being entirely truthful in his reactions and in his statements. But yeah, I wanted to point that out.
I don't think they have to. I think they're making the choice to. I think they're making a point to do that. And I think if it was Alex Smith, a rookie actor, that they probably wouldn't go after him. That's why I think there was a political motivation to it when we saw the former prosecutor. And you're right. I mean, about the gun and the functioning, that would certainly be, and I think it has been, the source of a motion to dismiss, because they're not able to look into that, how much pressure needed to be applied to that gun, because he could have bumped the trigger, thought he didn't pull it. We don't really know, because that's something they cannot test, right? So I think that is something that is a well-taken motion to dismiss, but I could see why the judge denied it, because really the issue is due caution. But what you're speaking to when you talk about going back and forth, it's the moral quandary, I guess, of putting this trial forward, because one of the shortcomings, and it's just the way it is, there's not enough opportunities for healing in the court system. There's not enough opportunities for moving people forward beyond the event. And when you have that healing has already taken place between Alec Baldwin, Halyna's husband, and they've come together. And as you mentioned, Alec and Halyna were friends, which I think is going to serve him in terms of the due caution argument, because he would want to be cautious around his friend. This idea then that we are going to take that healing and rip it apart in order to, whether it's torment Alec Baldwin or fly the flag of what we believe is a sense of justice with those. I mean, prosecutors have.
Me too, Melinda. I'll definitely hit him up and have him on if Alec testifies. That would be really interesting.
Have a lot of power individually. They can just decide, no, this is terrible, and try to take down Alec Baldwin for what amounts to no reason, in my mind.
Yeah, and I also just want to say, this is how I feel right now. Obviously, I haven't, the trial hasn't started yet. I don't want to say like I'm so staunch on this. I don't think he should necessarily be convicted. I'm at this point, I'm just a bit confused. So I do want to see all of the facts from both sides. I want to see, I don't even know if you call it evidence at this point. I don't know what you call it, because I feel like you're really just going to hear from different people, different witnesses. And, the other thing is just the mere fact that if you are going to be charged with involuntary manslaughter, I feel like this is the state to do it, New Mexico, because I read that the maximum sentence is 18 months. That's maximum for involuntary manslaughter. So, I mean, if he's guilty, could he serve, 6 months? Could he serve 3 months, Kirk?
This is
what do you think
interesting
about that?
what he says.
I mean, I believe it's also probation eligible. I think the maximum is 18 months. He could be put on probation. I think there is a distinct, we saw the armor, she got all 18 months, right? But
Yes.
and that a lot of people said, well, hey, that's an ominous sign for Alec Baldwin moving forward. And I don't think that's necessarily the case, because in that defendant, we're talking about a 20 person who's got drug issues, who is, who is completely disconnected from the consequences of her choices, right? I mean, hey, let's party it up.
100%.
Let's do some coke, and who cares if there's live ammo? Let's, we heard about target shooting and everything else. Let's just have a big party on this movie that I'm working on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and there's just a non-caring attitude from her, right? As opposed to Alec Baldwin, who's saying she was my friend.
Sorry, guys, my kids, I feel like you might be able to hear them in the background, or maybe not. If you do, I'm very sorry.
I cared about her. I'm devastated by this, all the things that you just mentioned. And I think, so in terms of sentencing, as a judge, if I was sitting there going, to me, there's a big difference. And I could not see the value in putting Alec Baldwin behind bars. I just wouldn't see the point.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you at this point. And just to add to that, it's crazy because Hannah Gutierrez Reed was one of the worst defendants I've seen. That was, oh my gosh, if I was her lawyer, I would have been slapping her upside the head. Like, do you want to serve less time than 18 months? Like,
seriously, bitch looks sad. Like, what's wrong with you? I never understood that.
You need to act a little bit sorry. You need to act like you care just a smidge. But so Kirk, I started late here, and I'm gonna wrap this up. But is there anything that you feel that you want to add before everything starts tomorrow?
I think I'll go back to that idea when people think about this case. I'll go back to what I said about the brakes, the car brakes, because I think that's really a great way for people to look at this in terms of, would they want to be held liable if they had a brake issue? They didn't have time to take it to their dealership. They took it to their local mechanic, and he or she screwed up and they hit someone and killed someone. Would they feel like they should have criminal liability hoisted upon them? Because that's really what we're talking about here. We're talking about somebody who hired subpar workers to do a job that they failed to do. And I think most people would say, no, listen, I tried, and that's going to be the challenge of the Baldwin defense team, because you're going to have, obviously, Halyna Hutchins and the emotion, the rightful emotion associated with her death, and she's a mom and all these things, right? But really breaking it down to that moment in time and thinking about that example, like, should you be going to prison or tabbed a felon because the person that you hired to do a job didn't do it? And that would be the theme that I would constantly reinforce, because most people are going to think no.
Super tough.
I think most people, even, maybe the live will prove me wrong afterwards, and you'll send me all the messages how I lack any intellect whatsoever. But at the same time, like, think about it that way, in that context, because we're talking about that due caution, right? You still got your car fixed, you still got your brake fixed. They just did a bad job, and you killed somebody. So does that make you a felon? Does that make you somebody who committed involuntary manslaughter? I would say
what do you
no.
guys think?
And I don't think
Kirk says no. I am like, I just want to know what everyone else thinks about that. I think that's a really good point. Does that make you a convicted felon when you hired someone to do this job that they specialize in? You don't, you trust them, you hire them, you pay them. I mean, it's a really good point. He says no, that should make you a convicted felon. And I tend to agree, but please let me know your thoughts. And Melinda,
you had said you thought she was just incompetent. You had no idea that she was drugging and partying. You didn't watch the trial. That's fine. Yeah, she was doing cocaine and she hid a bag or flushed a bag or something like that after this happened. Not good.
The situation is much different here because those layers were in place, even if they were in place poorly. And that's why we see the state wanting to open it up to producers and things like that.
Yes.
But
yes.
but
This, Sue, I'm
ultimately,
with you.
if everyone else had done their job, that weapon of destruction should not have been capable of destruction.
Yep.
And that's really and so to me, that's the bottom line here. Whether you change it, say, oh well, it's a gun, you never pointed a gun at anybody, that's the golden rule of guns. That's not maybe the golden rule of guns when it relates to movies, right? Because we see in the movies all the time, right?
Yes.
That's what happens in movies, right? So, you know, and you can get into why it wasn't a fake gun or what have you, right? But at the same time, to me, that's the bottom line, to look at that particular moment and look at that due caution issue and compare it to something in real life, like I tried to do with the car brakes, and really think about it in that context, because it's real easy to get hooked into the emotions of the death, which is tragic, and look at Alec Baldwin and say, oh, because it's a gun, and say, oh man, he should never pointed it, blah blah blah.
Right.
That's not true in the world in which he operates. And as the Screen Actors Guild pointed out, or not directly to Alec Baldwin, but saying this is kind of, they dictated the industry standard. And by all accounts, he abided by that industry standard when he was working as an actor on Rust. So I would.
Yeah, so that's pretty much where we ended things. I'm going to remove this really quick. So Kirk, he generally feels the same way that I do in terms of, I don't necessarily know that this should have gone to trial. I fully agree. Somebody's life has been lost. A boy doesn't have their mother. A husband doesn't have his wife. And whoever was involved, they need to take accountability. They need to take ownership. And for me, that was Hannah Gutierrez Reed, 100%. I was very involved with that. I was very just fixated on her being found guilty because I felt like she was careless. She didn't care. She was selfish. She was immature. And as a result of that, somebody lost their life. Alec Baldwin, again, we haven't seen anything from the defense or the state yet. So I can't necessarily speak to if he should be found guilty or innocent without, watching a trial. But I'm just a little perplexed as to why we got this far, especially when I do feel like with Alec Baldwin, it could have just been settled as a civil suit and we could move on. And, and the family of Halyna Hutchins could move on. And this is also just becoming, because Alec Baldwin is such a high profile celebrity. Yes, Sue, you agree about Hannah. Yeah, totally. She's the worst, or she seems like the worst. But because he's such a celebrity, it's the whole thing about the defendants just kind of getting all of the attention here in the trial, and the victims, unfortunately, are forgotten. So yeah, that's how I'm feeling about this right now. I found, this is kind of cringy. I was going to show you guys. Let me put it on really quick. When I covered the 2019 movie, just for fun, I'll play a part of it when I interviewed Baldwin, and you can see in some of the B-roll, you can see Joel Sousa in this. He's just a little guy. He's very small. But there's a lot of the same cast and crew in Rust that as this movie, which is called Crown Vic. And you'll notice it when the movie comes out, when Rust finally comes out, which, by the way, it doesn't have a release date yet. We don't know when Rust is coming out, but we do know that they completed the filming. So I thought that was interesting as well, if you did not know that. Let me share the screen here so you can see. Don't make fun of me. I'm just going to play part of it, but
Lynn here, and I'm at the New York City premiere of Crown Vic. I'm going to talk to the celebrities and get the scoop. Crown Vic takes us on a ride through one memorable night while 2 LAPD officers are hunting cop killers on the loose.
Are you cringing yet? I don't know.
Because rough men stand ready to do violence on their behalf.
It's actually a really good movie. Joel Sousa did a good job directing it.
Alec Baldwin is one of the producers on the film. I loved it. I saw it. I just was curious. You're a New Yorker. Why LAPD? Why not NYPD?
I think that the culture in LA and the culture in New York in terms of cop dramas is different. Someone told me that the LAPD lives by one threat, and that is that people commit crimes, and they're maybe 15 minutes away on surface streets from a major artery that can take you out to the desert in an hour. You're gone. You're like the cops have a strangely different job there, which is it's a town about roads and driving, and people can get. New York is like, what are you going to do? Race down Fifth Avenue and get away?
Bridget Moynihan plays Tracy Peters, the widowed drug addict in the film.
Okay, so you guys, you get it. I thought that actually wasn't as cringy as I thought. But Melinda, you said, wow, I didn't think it would get released. Well, it hasn't been released yet. There's no release date that we know of, but the film itself has been finished. They completed the filming. And when the film The Crow came out with Brandon Lee, Bruce Lee's son, Brandon Lee was killed on the set of that film accidentally. A lot of people wanted to go see it. So that film in the box office did really well because people were just so curious. So I think for this film, sounds really twisted and dark, but I do feel like it might go that way as well, where people are like, oh, I got to see this movie where somebody was shot and killed on set, just because that's the way society is sometimes. So I think that, yeah, when the trial is over and depending on the verdict, I think that's when we're going to get an idea of where and when this film is going to be released. I can't imagine that these streaming services are going to want to house it, because that's half the battle. You know, you've got your film here, but you've got to place it. You've got to get it placed. So who knows? I mean, let's see what happens. But I want to thank everybody for joining this live. I'm going to do a lot more. I'm just getting used to it, and I really appreciate everybody watching. All like 7 of you. It's super nice. But I'm going to keep going. And I'm going to do this, and I'm going to start doing them intermittently. And I'm going to start, do people do them just like spontaneously, or do most people plan them? I don't even know how all of that works. I have to figure it all out. Oh, thank you, Sue. You're so nice. You love the lives. Okay, good. I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to try, but, I did fast forward a lot of Kirk's interviews. So what I'm going to do after this is I'm going to load it into podcast form, audio. So if you listen to The Outlier, you can get that wherever you listen to audio podcasts. I'll have an intro, and then I'll have the full interview with Kirk. And then, of course, everybody can, play this video back and gather what you will from this. But I do appreciate you watching. And if you don't like and subscribe to this YouTube, I would really appreciate it. You can follow me on Twitter at Conlin_Lauren. And yeah, also subscribe to The Outlier wherever you listen. Thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate everyone listening or watching.